so many things that we can talk about here. There's so many directions we can take this in. I mean, maybe we should take it into a little bit of a role play to just to illustrate this a little bit more for the people watching. So, how do we do this then? Do you want me to be the hot girl, or do you want to be the hot girl? Or probably I should be the girl, right? And you should. Yeah. Okay.
But before we doing the role play, what I want to emphasize here as well is one of the best conversational people, the best people in dating or in other fields. But when it comes to conversations, is the best one actually make conversation where the guy and the girl is talking about the girl. So that is, I want to emphasize this one. So when I'm speaking with a girl, I'm trying to make the whole conversation about her. So she might talk 60%, I might talk 40%, but it's mostly about her. And the only thing I talk about me is when I'm relating things to what she's answered to an extent of about 20%. So because we don't want to just sit and don't say anything. We want to have a conversation. It should be like you and her having conversation about her. That is like the main thing, really. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay, now that's point taken. And I mean, there's a couple of other things I want to ask you about the. Well, actually, all right. Just before we do this, then, so what would you say about the classic sort of London day game model approach to this, where the guy might go in and say, "Hey, you look really nice. Good to, had to come over and say hi." She's like, "Oh, hi." I was like, "But you know what? You look Italian. I reckon you're from Rome." And she says, "No, actually, I'm not from Rome. I'm actually Spanish. I'm from Barcelona." And then the guy says, "Oh, Barcelona, really? Wow. Do you know what? That reminds me of this time I was in Barcelona just 3 weeks ago, and we had this crazy time, and we were at this party, and blah, 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 blah." And he tells a bit of a story, and he's waiting for her to sort of get hooked. She's observing his persona. He can hold the room. He's got this command presence. He's telling that he's adept at speaking. And hopefully at some point she hooks in and she goes, "Oh, that's really cool. So are you from London?" Or she asks a question or something, shows she's invested. What's your take on that as a model, as opposed to what you're saying? Can the two things coexist, or is your model sort of, because your model seems to be much more not holding chords as the guy, but much more putting the focus on her from the off?
What I see here a little bit is like, if you really can pull it off, I think it can actually be like an additional part of opening the bottles. You see, opening the bottle. But that's what it is. It's just opening the bottle, because eventually you still need to go into a normal conversation with her.
Yes.
So it's just a prolonged initial approach ritual, basically. So it can definitely coexist. But if you don't know it and you're trying to like stage perform it, you see what I mean? If you can do it authentically and it looks really authentically, just go ahead and do it. If you can't do it, I don't think it's much of a loss at all. Right. If you just going with the direct approach, the direct opening, and then direct is like, okay, so Vanessa, tell me, what do you think about the city, or what do you think about this bar, or what do you think? I think that is like, you go long way with it, because the main thing here is to get into a conversation as soon as possible that goes under the surface.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So that's actually the main part. The London day game, and specifically when it comes to this association part, being a little bit playful, being a little bit funny, has its place. But if you can get into a conversation anyway, then all those things doesn't matter that much. It's not where it can get her attention, but that is not where things are happening in that sense.
Well, okay, so I suppose the argument people who propagate those ideas would make is, okay, but you need to give her some value up front and don't make her do too much of the work. So if you go over and you start asking her questions, you haven't really given anything apart from you've given her a compliment, but you haven't really given her very much, and then you're sort of asking her things, and you're kind of making her do the work. So what would you respond to that?
I will respond to that in the terms of how you ask the question and how many questions you ask, because unless you are schooled into make the topic in a deeper level, to actually listen to what she said and take the cues of what she said and work with this one, it's not until then where you're actually going under the surface. But if you're not schooled in that way, if you never had any kind of course or any kind of studies in basic communication, you will not know how to actually go there. You don't know how to get there. So what are we doing then? We're doing what is written in our DNA, is to ask surface-based question that leads to a conversation that is based on exchange of information. And the girl doesn't want to exchange that much information, so it become like very platonic, and then it just dies out. Where do you come from? Okay. What do you do? Okay. So how old are you? Okay. How many pets do you have? I mean, that kind of questions is what we do when we don't know what to ask about.
Yes.
You see, so when we are now taking two variables into consideration here. It's like we take one person that doesn't know how to ask the right question and go into depth, but he know how to ask questions in general. And we're taking one guy that is schooled asking questions, and then suddenly stop and get into depth and talk about things that matters in conversation. I mean, there's a huge gap between those two. You see, and I get the point, like, oh, but you should not ask so many questions, because if you ask those superficial questions too early, then she will not listen to them. So what should we do? We should be a little bit playful before we can ask those superficial questions. But I'm my system, or the scientific community system, we don't go that far. We don't ask, like lots of superficial questions. We ask like one close-ended maybe, and then we're going up with follow-up questions, and we're going to get into depth and talk about things that actually matters. We're gravitating towards things that are genuinely interesting.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, point taken. I get it.
You get the point. Yeah.
So, let's go into a bit of a role play. So afterwards, I want to talk about the results of this, because obviously you've seen some fantastic results, and I know the guys that you've spoken to have seen great results as well. But should we just do this as a little bit of a role play?
Yeah.
With me as the girl.
The last thing. One misconception when it comes to being a good communicator is that we have to speak very good about things.
Yeah.
That is wrong. The number one most powerful skill you have in communication is actually listening. And not only listening, you have to active listening, you have to have a lot of reflective listening and empathetic listening skills. That is actually the main part of being a good conversationalist. Really, it's about listening. And most people think that, a good conversationalist is more based on stage rhetoric of how I say things and how much energy I bring to the table. No, it's not about this one. For an untrained eye, they may think like, but this is just quite normal conversation that doesn't have so many spikes. But for a trained eye, they will say directly like, wow, this is a conversation that leads to connection, really leads to connection with everything, including this one. And the funny thing is, like, if you want to optimize, we're not talking about only good. If you want to optimize the connection with the girl, they're going to lead to sex, relationship, and everything like this one. The conversation doesn't look that spectacular.
Yeah.
Really, you can forget about this. Wow, this stage performance things, because so many other dating. I would not say dating coaches maybe, but in a dating scene, they think that everything have to be in this particular form. That is creating the alpha, etc., etc. But it's not true, actually.
No, you're right.
It's not true at all.
Yeah, you're right, and it's kind of, I think it's partly YouTube is a double-edged sword, because on the one hand it's great because it's brought a lot of knowledge to millions of people, but at the same time, there's a tendency to want to make things look sensational, to be entertaining. And so it's a guy and he stops a woman and she's riding a tricycle and juggling and all this kind of thing, and it doesn't need to be like that. The best interactions really, on the surface, look fairly mundane, or you wouldn't really know something was really happening under the surface.
Exactly. As for the untrained eye, they will not notice much actually. They will think like, "Whoa, shouldn't he take something from the pocket and start like doing something fun with 3 balls or something?" They will feel like, "But I don't know what's happening here." And where's the cool alpha and the cool jokes and the cool bantering? Of course, they are included into the normal conversation, but it's not in the way people think. You see, and when you make a small joke about something that is connected with her on a deeper level, it will give so much more positive result than you coming with a great joke, but on the superficial level. That is not really connected with her, but you're taking something from thin air and make a great joke. Rhetorically, wow, that was really fun, but it's not connected with her. Cannot even be matched with something small but is connected with her.
Yeah.
You see, it's like
Yeah.
it's like day and night.
Yeah.